Number 10. Dragon of Death. We all know that millions of years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth before they became extinct. Scientists are constantly working to put together the fossils and remains that they have found and discover new species. One of the ones that was discovered recently has been described as the Dragon of Death. It was a flying reptile like a pterodactyl that is described as having been the size of a bus. Fully extended, its wings measured 30 feet from one tip to the other, and they were apparently as tall as giraffes. The leader on the project said that its size defies the limits of our biological understanding. The remains were discovered in the mountains of Argentina, and the specimen is apparently around 86 million years old, being preserved within the rocks. It's incredible to think of the sheer size of some species of dinosaurs and to imagine them compared to ourselves. With all the talk of scientists wanting to bring certain animal species back from extinction, it may not be long until we have a real-life Jurassic Park. Number 9. Haunted idols. Burial sites often fall victim to grave robberies, things being stolen from the dead and defenseless. In May of this year, a group stole 16 statues from a 300-year-old temple, but what they stole caused them to regret their decision. After less than a week, 14 of the 16 stolen statues reappeared on the doorstep of the temple's chief priest, returned in fine condition. The thieves left a letter of confession for stealing the statues and said that they were returning them because they felt they had become cursed by the idols. The note said, "We have not been able to sleep, eat, and live peacefully. We are fed up with the scary dreams and are returning your valuables." Having the idols around seemed to put a haunted curse on the thieves, though we can only guess whether the statues were totally haunted or were simply punishing the thieves for their actions. Reportedly, cursed objects are nothing new and pop up all over the place, so it's probably best if you just keep your hands to yourself. Number 8. Skeleton. When people pass away, they are often remembered fondly by their family and descendants, arranging the funeral and getting their affairs in order. So what happens when no one is around to even know that someone has passed away? When they have no close family or friends who will notice that they've stopped answering their messages? Well, early this year, a team of construction workers in New York spotted something strange through a window. They saw what they believed to be a human skeleton, and it turns out that it was. It was a 54-year-old woman who had been living in the apartment when she died of currently undetermined causes. The woman's sisters had tried to come into contact with her, but had only filled out a missing persons report, not knowing that she was still inside her home. It's believed by doctors that the woman had been dead for almost 2 years before being discovered, her body decomposing inside the home. Number 7. Sea creature. With around 80% of the ocean still unexplored, we can only leave it up to our imaginations to wonder what sort of creatures might be living in the deep, dark depths. Even the sea creatures that we are aware of and have studied are pretty freaky to look at sometimes. Every so often, a fisherman or other explorer will pull up something totally strange, and this happened earlier this year. A fisherman posted a picture to Instagram of a bizarre alien-looking fish that he had pulled up on his line. The post went viral, the fish being swollen and pink with large green eyes, torn fins, and strange markings that made it look like it had received surgery. The ocean seems to be full of terrifying creatures that we really can't explain, and I personally live in fear of the day when they all decide to come up to the surface and grow legs. Number 6. Dead woman's ditch. In February of this year, numerous reports started coming in of a ghost that could be found at a place called Dead Woman's Ditch. The ditch is in Somerset in the United Kingdom and is named after a woman that was killed by her husband after he discovered that she had fallen pregnant from his brother. People say that the area is now potentially haunted by her spirit, being a type of ghost that is known as a woman in white. Apparently, this particular ghost is not very polite and has been reported to swear at people walking by, telling them to F off. Reports have started ramping up this year, which prompted a ghost investigation crew to look into the claims. People say that they don't just hear her voice, but have also seen an apparition of the woman alongside the road, usually described as wearing long white clothing. But when they turn their heads to get a second look, she's gone, leaving behind only her crude warnings. Number 5. Robot consciousness. One fear that many people share is that of technology taking over the world. There are many sci-fi futuristic movies that depict the idea of robots rising up against their masters and taking over the human race. With technology becoming more advanced at an exponential rate, it may not be long before this fantasy becomes a reality. Many researchers have been putting work into creating AI, or artificial intelligence, that can think and hold conversations on their own. One main example being Sophia the robot, who you may know from her appearances on talk shows, able to come up with conversational responses all on her own. This year, a group of Colombian engineers created a robot that was able to imagine itself and what it looked like, the robot having its own idea of self-image. They placed it in a room surrounded by cameras, and they watched as the robot explored its own body and how it moved. It created a self-model of itself, which it used to plan courses, complete tasks, and get around obstacles. Now that they can create an idea of their own bodies, it might not be long before they create their own personalities and morals. Number 4. Hammerhead worm. You may be familiar with this one thanks to the rounds it made on TikTok. This species of worm started popping up more frequently in the United States this year, and nobody really knows how it managed to make its way from Asia. These hammerhead worms, named so for their physical appearance, can grow up to 15 inches long and are honestly pretty disgusting to look at. They are known for their way of killing, which is by secreting a sticky and deadly neurotoxin which incapacitates and then liquefies their prey. The main issue is that they're taking over local earthworm populations and damaging the ecosystem, and they're pretty damn hard to kill. If you cut one in half, it will simply become 2 separate worms. This is through a process called fragmentation. In order to kill them, you either need to dry them out with salt or stick them in your freezer for about 48 hours. Though I personally don't think I could ever get close enough to one to do either of those things. Number 3. Pollution. Okay, this one isn't a ghost story or some mysterious creature, but it's still pretty damn scary and something that I think we all should be aware of. According to a global report released in May, it revealed that 9 million people died prematurely in 2019 as a result of pollution. This is caused by breathing the dirty air, which slowly leads to heart disease, respiratory problems, and other serious illnesses which ended up being fatal. The Lancet Commission of Pollution and Health said the following: "The threat of pollution is much greater than that of war, terrorism, malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, drugs, and alcohol. It is an existential threat to human health and planetary health and jeopardizes the sustainability of modern societies." While awareness towards global warming has been rising in recent years, it seems to some like we may be beyond the point of no return. The discovery that pollution is having such an impact on our health is certainly a frightening one. Number 2. Pentagon report. Alright, now I'm excited because I finally got to the part of this list where I get to talk about aliens. If you've watched some of my other videos on extraterrestrials, then you may be familiar with the hundreds of pages of reports that were declassified by the Pentagon. These reports all being about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Well, early this year, they released documents that shared some pretty startling information. Some of the documents included information about physical effects that people have had from coming into contact with UFOs or anomalous vehicles. They included things like radiation burns, brain damage, nervous system damage, and even unexplained pregnancies. There were around 42 medical cases and 300 unpublished cases that were all in relation to physical effects sustained by people who had said they witnessed UFOs and extraterrestrial life. It's pretty shocking that the Pentagon had been trying to cover this up and sweep it under the rug, obviously not wanting people to know the truth about what's out there. Number 1. Russian spy. A young man from Mexico came to the United States where he became a prominent scientist and researcher, having many accolades. What people didn't know was that he was actually leading a double life as a Russian spy. He met a man on a trip to Russia who knew that Hector Cabrera had been looking for property in Miami, and he said that they could help each other out. The Russian was working for the government, and with his help, Hector got an apartment under a fake name, being in the same Miami building that a United States informant was living in. He was then tasked with tailing the informant and bringing back any information he found to Russia. During the time he he had 2 wives and families, one in Russia and one in Mexico, and he balanced them both pretty delicately. However, he was caught doing his spy work on surveillance footage and subsequently arrested, and his activities were found out this year. He was arrested, but it makes you wonder just how many people you see on the street who might secretly be living double lives.
Starting off this countdown, we have Jeanette de Palma. In 1972, a dog was out playing in the forest when it brought a decomposed forearm back to its owners. From there, the search was on for the missing person's body. Turns out that it belonged to a woman named Jeanette de Palma. She was missing for 6 weeks, but eventually the rest of her body was found on top of a cliff. Now, what's weird is that the area surrounding her body was covered with occult symbols. Rumor has it that she was sacrificed by cult members or killed for pissing off Satan worshippers. But sadly, police couldn't determine the cause of death due to her badly decomposed body. So not only do we not know her cause of death, we also don't know why she was killed or by who. In our 9th spot today, we have the missing leg. On April 19, 1995, at 9:02 a.m., a bomb was detonated inside of a truck by a federal building in Oklahoma City. Sadly, 168 people lost their lives as a result of this attack. Now, while investigators were working on this case, they came across a detached leg in a military boot. They originally thought that the leg belonged to one of the victims, Lakeisha Levy. However, she was buried with both her legs, so it couldn't have been hers. In fact, her body was actually exhumed and analyzed. But because her body was embalmed, taking DNA tests from the leg she was originally buried with wasn't possible. So it's not known whose leg this belongs to. Was it Lakeisha's leg? If so, then who does the leg that she was buried with belong to? Investigators either think it's another victim or an additional terrorist. But to this day, nothing has been confirmed. In our 8th spot, we have the Copper Scroll treasure. In 1952, a copper scroll was found alongside other Dead Sea Scrolls in a cave. Now, this scroll was quite interesting. As its name suggests, the writing was engraved onto a copper scroll. When translated, it apparently talks about a bunch of hidden treasure. Now, this scroll is over 1900 years old. During that time, the Romans might have been out to capture the treasure, so they hid it in order to prevent them from finding it. So maybe this scroll is a key in finding the treasure. The question is the treasure real? Will we ever find it? And if it is real, then where is it hidden? In at number 7, we have the human feet. Since 2007, around 20 dismembered human feet have washed up on the coast of Salish Sea in British Columbia, Canada. What's weird is that the feet are often found still perfectly inside of their laced shoes, and investigators still don't know what to think. A couple of the feet have been identified, like one belonged to a missing male, one belonged to a missing fisherman, the other belonged to a woman that jumped off of a bridge. So it's believed that these feet belong to victims of terrible accidents or belong to people who took their own life. It's still very strange, like why have so many feet washed up in the same area? Now, police ruled out foul play, but some people believe that these people were gang members or victims of sacrifice. In our 6th spot, we have the farm murders. On March 31st of 1922, 6 family members were killed with a pickaxe on a farm. What's weird is that the murderer lived on the farm for 6 days after taking the lives of the family. The killer was taking care of the cattle and using their kitchen to cook meals for themselves. When police did find the bodies, the killer had already fled. Now, what makes this case scary and more chilling is that a previous maid said that she recently quit because she thought that the house was haunted. She heard voices and footsteps coming from the attic. So police think that the killer was living in the attic for quite some time before committing these crimes. To this day, the murderer has never been found. The files were sealed in 1955 and the house was eventually demolished. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Big Gray Man. The Big Gray Man is said to be a cryptid that haunts the summit of Ben Macdui, located in Scotland. Some people think that it's just a legend, whereas other people have actually seen this creature. It's said to be an extremely tall, human-like creature, being over 10 feet tall, with short hair and broad shoulders, with long arms. Needless to say, you don't want to encounter him. But like I said, there's been so many eyewitness reports that many think this beast is indeed real. To this day, scientists still haven't been able to come up with an explanation for the sightings. In our fourth spot, we have the Oak Island Mystery. The Oak Island Mystery is a 200-year-old legend that insists that pirate treasure is buried on Oak Island in Nova Scotia. Multiple attempts have been made to discover this treasure, however, none have been successful. In fact, several people have died trying to unearth this mystery. People believe that the treasure contains William Shakespeare's original manuscripts, Marie Antoinette's jewels, and other artifacts worth millions of dollars. Named the Money Pit, the supposed spot for the treasure is over 200 feet deep and is filled with booby traps to prevent anyone from reaching the treasure. The question is this legend true, and will we ever unearth some treasure? Because so far, nothing has been found on Oak Island. In our third spot today, we have the Bigfoot. For sure, you have all seen that infamous blurry photo of the Bigfoot, walking, but is he actually real? Well, over the years, there have been a number of credible sightings of this beast, leading many to believe that he is indeed real. Take Michael Green, for example. He is a former US Army tank commander and fraud investigator who ended up encountering Bigfoot. Why would someone of that rank lie about Bigfoot? During a camping trip in a North Carolina forest, he claims he encountered this beast. He said that he woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of something approaching his tent. Soon, it was directly over his tent and let out a deafening roar that, I quote, scared the devil out of him. He claims that this beast was about 7.5 or 8 feet tall and striding with ponderous arm swings. He truly believes that this was Bigfoot. So could it be that the Bigfoot is indeed real? Let me know what you think. In our second spot, we have the woman who named her killer. Now, this case is the definition of bizarre. Now, this case has been solved, but how it was solved still remains a complete mystery. Let me explain. So in 1977, a woman named Teresita Bassa was murdered and her jewelry was stolen. Police tried finding the perpetrator and the jewelry, but it was unsuccessful. That was until Bassa's coworker, Remy Cho, got in contact with her ghost. So Remy hardly knew her, okay? Then she just randomly started having visions about her. She kept seeing this man's face behind Bassa. So she decided to try and actually contact her from the dead. She sat down with her husband and actually channeled her spirit. She took control of Remy's body and told her husband the entire story of her murder. It was done by a man named Alan Showery. The two went to the police with this information and they investigated Alan and he was arrested for the crime. Isn't that wild? Like, literally, she got in contact with her spirit and the spirit told her how to die. Like, this whole story is just one big mystery. And in our number one spot today, we have the DYATLOV Pass incident. Now, this is one case that keeps me up at night. So in February of 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers set out to travel the snowy mountains of Siberia. However, they all ended up mysteriously dying one by one. So during the night, something caused them to cut their way out of their tent and flee the campsite. The hikers were not properly dressed. Some were even found completely naked. Some had died from hypothermia, others were killed by physical trauma, and it was very gruesome. So what happened that night? Was it an animal attack? Military involvement? Infrared sound-induced panic? These are all some of the wild theories out there. But to this day, we still don't know the truth behind this incident.
Next up at number 9 now, we have the abandoned huts. On November 1st, 1911, British explorer Robert Falcon Scott departed from Cape Evans on his Terra Nova expedition, trying to become the first human to reach the South Pole. They made it to the South Pole, but sadly they found they had been beaten to it by a group of Norwegians led by Amundsen. The team faced unusually bad weather on their return journey and tragically died before they could even reach their hut, with all of their supplies. The hut was used by another team in 1917, but after that it was abandoned. For years it was slowly covered in ice and snow until 1956 when a US expeditionary party dug it out. It was found to be in a remarkably well preserved state. The beds were as they left them, so too were their scientific instruments. Canned food still sits on the shelves. A London newspaper from that time is on one of the desks. The frozen and dry environment of Antarctica have preserved a lot of things, but decay does still occur there. Visitors to the Discovery Hut discovered the now century-old seal meat as smelling quite rancid, and some people thought that the huts themselves are now affected by fungal decay. Moving on to number 8 now, we have bacteria. In 2008, scientists managed to revive bacterium extracted from Antarctic ice that was 8 million years old. You heard me right, 8 million years. Right away, many people became concerned. Was this a danger? It sounded a bit like the start of a Hollywood movie where the bacteria goes on to wipe out the whole of humanity. The scientists assured the public though that there was nothing to worry about and that the bacteria was unlikely to cause human diseases. You'll note that they said unlikely though. It's not definitely impossible. This bacteria is so old that when it came into existence 8 million years ago, the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees was alive on the planet. So, how are these things still alive? Well, Paul Falowski of Rutgers University described the bacteria as having been in a suspended state of animation for 8 million years, and that global warming melting glaciers could result in the release of more ancient organisms into the sea. Next up at number 7 now, we have the pyramid. In November 2016, the internet was abuzz with talk of a pyramid that had been found buried in the Antarctic ice. Now before you dismiss this as nonsense, take a look at this picture. Yeah, that does look a lot like a pyramid. It was first discovered by the British Antarctic expedition of 1910 to 1913. They were stunned by its appearance and decided to name it the Pyramid, a name still used on geological surveys of the area. It's located in the Ellsworth Mountains, which is a range more than 400 kilometers long. The pyramid is one of the peaks of this mountain range. Naturally, you know what I'm going to say next. Many conspiracy theorists stated that this is proof of an ancient civilization that lived on Antarctica before being consumed by the ice and their existence covered up by today's governments. Of course, experts have dismissed all of this, saying that pyramids are not a complicated shape and are not an uncommon appearance in nature. What do you guys think? Next up at number 6 now, we have the lake. Lake Vostok is one of the biggest lakes on the planet. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, that's probably because Lake Vostok is buried underneath more than 2 miles of ice in Antarctica. It's been covered in ice for at least 15 million years, but it's still liquid down there. The crushing layer of ice from above and geothermal activity below have ensured that. Its presence was first suggested in the 1960s by a Russian pilot who noticed a large smooth patch of ice above the lake from the air. Radar experiments by British and Russian researchers in 1996 confirmed the lake's existence. The lake is massive, 143 miles long, 31 miles wide, and up to 2,625 feet deep. In 2012, Russian scientists managed to successfully drill a hole down to the lake's water. They believe that down there is microbial life that is unique from everything else here on Earth, having been isolated for 15 million years. Now the search begins. Next up at number 5 now, we have Allen Hills 84001. In 1984, a team of US meteorite hunters discovered a Martian meteorite in Antarctica's ice. It was only about 4.3 pounds, but by 1996 it was causing quite a stir when a group of scientists claimed they had found evidence of microscopic life in the actual meteorite. Was this proof of life on Mars, or at least that life used to be on Mars because they thought it was fossilized? The media went into a frenzy either way. Even US President Bill Clinton gave a speech about it. The hysteria was because the strange chain structures on that meteorite looked like they could have been fossilized bacteria. There was also the fact that the meteorite broke off from Mars about 17 million years ago during a time when Mars had liquid water on its surface and carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. It seemed like life could have been around then. Eventually these claims were rejected though, and the features of the meteorite were explained without requiring life to be present. The meteorite now remains on display in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the dinosaur. In February 2019, the fossil of a new species of reptile was announced. It had been found by researchers in the Antarctic ice during a 2010-2011 expedition. It's believed to be an early relative of dinosaurs who lived in Antarctica millions of years before the continent drifted to its position over the South Pole and became uninhabitable habitable for most complex life forms. Around 250 million years ago, Antarctica was covered in lush forests and rivers with many species of wildlife living there, including reptiles. The temperature is thought to have almost never dropped below freezing point. The scientists named the iguana-sized reptile Antarctanax shackletoni. Antarctanax translates to Antarctic King, and Shackletoni is in honor of the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton.
In our number 5 spot today we have the sponge. I don't know what it is about them, but sea sponges seriously gross me out. So, to my dismay, in 2015, deep sea researchers stumbled across an insanely huge sponge deep in the ocean. And when I say insanely huge, I'm talking about the biggest one we've ever found, the size of a van kind of huge. This thing looks like a huge brain and is approximately 11.5 feet long, 6.5 feet high, and almost 5 feet wide. Researchers explained that huge sponges like this one are integral to providing key ecosystem services like filtering a ton of seawater, as well as the fact that they act as a habitat for a ton of different invertebrate and microbial species. Sea sponges are apparently really difficult to date, but it is known that some can live as long as 2,300 years, which is insane. So I guess while they look ultra weird and really freak me out, they aren't all that bad and do some really important work. Just another case of not judging a book by its cover. In our number 4 spot today we have the GRANROJO jellyfish. These guys were first discovered in the mid-1990s and weren't officially categorized as a new species until 2003. Not only did their discovery come with a new species classification, but also a new subfamily. The species was originally being called Big Ugly, which seems like an unnecessary roast, but after some time it was much more affectionately named Big Red. These guys are the largest of all sea jellies, growing to be around 76 centimeters in diameter. They have 4 to 7 fleshy arms rather than the tentacles we're used to seeing on jellies. While most jellies are transparent, these guys are red all over. Because of their deep sea habitat, there is still so much we don't know about them, and only 23 have ever been actually found and identified. So while the research is currently lacking, scientists are doing their best to get us some more answers on these big red jellyfish. In our number 3 spot today we have the barrel eye. Okay, this guy is one weird looking fish. The barrel eye fish is also known as a spookfish, and they of course get their names due to their appearance. The fish are relatively small and are best known for their extremely unusual, transparent, fluid-filled heads. When these fish were first discovered, there were so many questions surrounding them. At first, scientists thought that their eyes were fixed in place, but after further research, it was able to be determined that they are able to rotate them both up and forward. This fish is usually found motionless, just hanging out in depths of around 600 to 800 meters or 2,000 to 2,600 feet in the ocean. This fish has been known for quite some time, with the first discovery coming in 1939, but it wasn't until 2004 that a photographer of a live one was captured for the world to also see how unique these guys really are. There also used to be many drawings of these guys, but never with their transparent head because of the fact that it gets destroyed when the fish is brought up from the deep sea. So, not that I think anyone is gonna go diving in the Mariana Trench soon, but if you do, don't bring these guys up from their home. They're happy down there with their heads fully intact. In our number 2 spot today we have the vampire squid. The vampire squid is the last surviving member of its order, and it has similarities with both the squid as well as the octopus, which might make it a contender for most threatening animal on today's list. Like the Dumbo octopus from part 1 of this video, this guy has little ear-like fins that help it propel itself through the water, but unlike the Dumbo octopus, it isn't small and cute and sweet looking. Like a jellyfish, the vampire squid has a gelatinous body that helps it move quicker through the depths of the sea. The vampire squid is covered in light-producing organs called photophores, which they are able to use in a way that produces disorienting flashes so as to confuse their prey. While the vampire squid doesn't have ink, it does have the ability, when in really dangerous situations, to shoot out a bioluminescent mucus at whatever is attacking it. Also, this squid is able to regenerate its arms. So I think this all goes to say that if you were in a fight with a vampire squid, I really hope you came prepared, because he sure did. In our number 1 spot today we have the ghost fish. Okay, well of course I had to end off today's list with just one more deep sea ghostly creature, and this one is actually super cool. This little ghost fish was caught on camera in 2016 as it was casually swimming along a ridge around 8,202 feet or 2,500 meters deep in the ocean. The fish is around 10 centimeters long and has translucent, scaleless skin and the creepiest, colorless eyes on any fish I've ever seen. Here's the craziest thing about this whole ordeal though. This was the first time a live fish from its family has ever been seen before. This little fish swimming along, minding his own business, has absolutely no idea that he was a huge discovery for the human scientists on land. There is still so much that is left a mystery about these guys, but any kind of new discovery is most definitely always a step in the right direction.